There is a fireproof lockbox in the back of my Volvo XC60. Combination lock, $39 from Home Depot. Inside it are 26 exhibits, labeled A through Z, each one a piece of the life my husband thought he was going to walk away with. He called me a downgrade. His mother called me worse. But I am a claims investigator, and when someone files a fraudulent claim on my life, I do not cry. I open a case. But I am getting ahead of myself. Way ahead. Because before there were 26 exhibits and a lockbox and a lawyer named Sophia who drinks black coffee like it is a personality trait, there was a girl in Gresham, Oregon, who knew the price of everything and the value of almost nothing. That girl was me. Let me take you back. Gresham is the kind of town people drive through on their way to somewhere better. East of Portland, south of Interesting, and north of nowhere in particular. My mother, Mei Lin Chen, moved there from Taipei when she was 23 with a sewing machine, $400, and an English vocabulary she had learned mostly from watching soap operas on a 13-inch television. She met my father, Patrick Sullivan, at a laundromat on Powell Boulevard. He was a postal carrier. She was hemming a stranger's dress pants for $12. He asked her if she could fix a button on his jacket. She charged him $3 and married him 4 years later. My mother still tells that story like it is a fairy tale. I hear it and think, she undercharged him by at least $2. But that is the difference between my mother and me. She sees love. I see invoices. My father was a good man. Quiet hands. The kind of man who came home smelling like rain and mailbox metal and never once raised his voice at dinner. He drove the same Dodge Dakota for 14 years. He packed his lunch every single day. Turkey on wheat, 1 apple, a thermos of coffee so bad my mother winced every time she made it. But she made it every morning anyway, because that is what love looked like in our house. Not diamonds, not weekends in Napa. A thermos of terrible coffee made with steady hands at 5:15 in the morning. He died when I was 18. Aortic aneurysm, in the parking lot of a Fred Meyer on Burnside. He was buying weather stripping for the back door because it had been letting in a draft since October, and he had promised my mother he would fix it before Thanksgiving. He was 52 years old. He died next to a shopping cart with weather stripping and a pack of AA batteries in it. I still cannot walk into a Fred Meyer without my hands going cold, which is inconvenient because their weekly deals on paper towels are genuinely hard to beat. My mother did not fall apart. Mei Lin Chen Sullivan does not fall apart. She hemmed 3 dresses the day after the funeral because Mrs. Henderson needed them for a trip to Sacramento. I found her at the kitchen table at 6 in the morning, pins between her teeth, eyes dry, hands moving like nothing had happened. And when I asked her why she was working, she said one word in Mandarin that does not translate perfectly into English, but means something close to endure. She has been saying that word my whole life. Endure. Endure the kids at school who pulled their eyes sideways at me. Endure the neighbors who asked where I was really from. Endure. It was her answer to everything, and for a very long time, I thought it was the right one. I was wrong about that, but it took me 18 years and 26 exhibits to figure it out. After my father died, my mother kept sewing, alterations at a small shop on Southeast Stark Street called Perfect Fit. She still works there. She can take in a wedding dress in 45 minutes and she charges $60, which in my professional opinion is highway robbery in her disfavor. But Mei Lin does not listen to me about pricing. She does not listen to me about most things. She listens to the fabric. She says the fabric tells her what it needs. I think she just does not want to admit she agrees with me. I worked through college. Portland State University. Double major in business administration and statistics, which sounds impressive until you realize it mostly qualifies you to make spreadsheets that nobody reads and argue about sample sizes at parties nobody invites you to. I paid for it with a combination of scholarships, federal loans, and weekend shifts at a Starbucks on Southeast Hawthorne where I learned 2 things. First, people will pay $6.75 for oat milk and espresso without flinching. And second, the world divides cleanly into people who tip and people who do not, and you can tell everything you need to know about a person by which side they fall on. I graduated at 22. I got a job as a junior claims analyst at Cascade Pacific Insurance in downtown Portland. My job then and now is to look at what people say happened to them and figure out whether it actually happened. I assess damage. I review evidence. I determine whether a claim is valid or fraudulent. I read the fine print. All of it. Yes, every single line. I know. I am a blast at parties. 3 months after I started that job, my grandmother died. Eileen Sullivan, my father's mother, and she left me everything she had. My grandmother, Eileen Sullivan, lived her entire life in a number. $139,800. That was it. That was 41 years of buying store-brand cereal, driving a Ford Taurus until the odometer rolled past 200,000, and the passenger door only opened if you hip-checked it at exactly the right angle, and depositing exactly $175 a month into a certificate of deposit at Columbia Credit Union like it was a sacrament. She never flew anywhere. She never bought a new couch. The one in her living room had a permanent dent in the left cushion where my grandfather sat every evening until he died in 1997, and she never fixed it. She said she liked knowing where he had been. I think about that sometimes. I think about it more than I probably should. The lawyer who handled her estate was a woman named Ruth Nakamura, small office on Southeast Belmont. She had silver hair cut short, reading glasses she kept on a beaded chain, and a framed photograph of her granddaughter on the desk next to a paperweight shaped like an owl. She sat me down and said one sentence that I did not fully understand until 13 years later. "This is Eileen's entire life in a check, Margot. Protect it like she protected you." I was 22. I nodded. I signed the documents. I deposited the check into my personal savings account at Columbia Credit Union, the same one my grandmother had used, because it felt right and because the interest rate was actually decent. 3.1% on a 12-month CD. My grandmother would have approved. The remaining funds, after the amount I would later use for the house, about $61,200, I invested separately, a brokerage account in my name only at Fidelity. I never mentioned it to anyone. Not my mother. Not my friends. Not, eventually, my husband. I am the kind of person who keeps financial information private, not because I am secretive, but because I have learned that what people do not know about your money, they cannot develop opinions about. And in certain families, opinions about money are as common as oxygen and twice as suffocating, but that part comes later. I want to tell you about the night I met the man who would eventually stand in my kitchen and tell me I was never good enough. Because the night itself was unremarkable, which is exactly what makes it dangerous. It was a wine tasting event in the Pearl District. October. I was 26. My friend Jess, who you will hear a lot more about, had dragged me there because she had read an article about how wine tastings were, quote, a great place to meet emotionally available men, end quote. I told her that anyone who describes themselves as emotionally available is almost certainly not. She told me to stop profiling people and try the Pinot. I was standing near the back of the room holding a glass of something I could not afford to buy by the bottle, trying to calculate whether the cheese plate justified the $45 entry fee, when a man walked over and said, "You look like you are profiling everyone in this room." I said, "Only the ones who are a liability." He laughed. It was a good laugh. Open, surprised, real, or it sounded real. I am less sure about that now. I am less sure about most things that came out of his mouth. But that night, in that room, with that laugh, he seemed like a person I could trust. His name was Tristan Aldridge. And no, he does not deserve the courtesy of a fake one. Tristan was a regional sales manager for a tech company based out of the West Hills. Sounded impressive, paid adequately. He drove a leased BMW X3, $624 a month, which I know because I eventually saw every financial statement he ever tried to hide from me. He drove a car he could not comfortably afford to a job that did not impress the people he was trying to impress. But he had nice teeth and he opened doors for me, and he remembered that I liked chamomile tea with honey, not sugar. And he brought me a box of it on our third date, the good kind, the organic one from the co-op on Southeast Division that costs $8.50, which I know because I checked. I check everything. It is a professional habit and a personality disorder. We dated for 2 years. He was attentive, mostly. He asked questions about my work. He laughed at my jokes, even the ones that were more observation than humor. He met my mother. Maylin made him scallion pancakes and watched him eat with the quiet intensity of a woman who was deciding whether this man was worthy of her daughter, based entirely on how he held his chopsticks. He held them correctly. She approved. Provisionally. We married when I was 28. Small ceremony. 32 guests. A courtyard at a restaurant in the Alberta Arts District. I wore a dress my mother altered herself because she said the original hemline was disrespectful to the fabric, and she was probably right. Jess was my maid of honor, she cried. I did not. I am not a crier. I am a filer. I filed the marriage certificate the next business day. Tristan's family came to the wedding, all of them. His mother, Carolyn Aldridge, 65, retired from running an interior design firm, arrived in a cream-colored blazer and a smile that did not reach her eyes. His father, Martin Aldridge, 68, retired corporate attorney, shook my mother's hand gently and said, "It is wonderful to meet you, Maylin." He meant it. I could tell because his voice did that thing where it gets softer when someone is being sincere instead of performing. Carolyn, on the other hand, looked at my mother, looked at her dress, looked at the restaurant, looked at the courtyard, and said, "What a charming venue, so intimate." She said intimate the way people say budget. That was the first time I heard it. That tone, that specific frequency of condescension wrapped in a compliment like a razor blade in a piece of fruit. I would hear it for the next 8 years. At every Sunday wine tasting, every holiday dinner, every carefully orchestrated Aldridge family gathering where Carolyn presided like a queen holding court in Lake Oswego. But that night, on my wedding night, I did not know what Carolyn Aldridge was. I thought she was just a mother-in-law who needed time. I thought I could win her over with patience and pot roast and professional accomplishments. I was wrong. You cannot win over a woman who decided you were insufficient before you ever walked through her door. And Carolyn Aldridge had decided that the day Tristan brought home a girl from Gresham whose mother was a seamstress from Taipei and whose father was a dead postal carrier from a town nobody in Lake Oswego had ever thought about twice. But I did not know that yet. And honestly, even if I had, I probably would have married him anyway. Because when your father is dead and your mother communicates primarily in stitches, a man who opens doors and remembers your tea order feels like a rescue. It was not a rescue. It was an 8-year liability claim. I just had not read the fine print yet. The Aldridges lived in Lake Oswego. If you are not from Oregon, Lake Oswego is what happens when a suburb becomes convinced it is a country club. Manicured lawns, German cars, the kind of neighborhood where people say, "We summer in Bend" without irony. The Aldridge home was a 4-bedroom colonial on Ridgewood Lane with a 3-car garage, a converted wine cellar, and a backyard lake view that Carolyn mentioned within 90 seconds of meeting anyone new. I timed it once. 87 seconds. She is remarkably consistent. Carolyn Aldridge was not a villain from the first handshake. If I paint her as a monster from day one, you will not believe me. And you should not, because people like Carolyn are not monsters. Monsters are obvious. Carolyn was architectural. She did not demolish you with a sledgehammer. She removed one brick at a time, so slowly you did not notice the wall was gone until you were standing in the cold. She had a way of complimenting people that left bruises. "Your hair looks so fun today. That is such a creative outfit. It must be so interesting growing up multicultural." She said that one at Thanksgiving, year 2, passing the cranberry sauce. Multicultural. She said it the way a museum guide describes an exhibit. Clinically. With distance. Like my existence was educational. Her specialty was the Sunday wine tasting. Every Sunday at 4, the Aldridge house opened for what Carolyn called a casual gathering, which was casual the way a job interview is casual if the interviewer is your mother-in-law and the job is proving you deserve to exist. She set out cheese boards with labels. Imported brie. Aged manchego. She paired wines with cards explaining vintage, region, tasting notes. It was beautiful. It was also a performance. And everyone was auditioning except Carolyn. Martin Aldridge was not like his wife. 68, retired corporate attorney, he had perfected strategic silence. He was not mean. Martin was simply married to Carolyn, which meant he had learned decades ago that nodding was easier than arguing. He built birdhouses in the garage on Saturdays. Once, he built me a shelf for my filing cabinet and brought it over without telling Carolyn, like it was contraband. I liked Martin. I did not respect his silence, but I understood why he chose it. I just did not realize until much later what that silence had cost other people. Now, Brooke Callahan. Even though you have not met her yet, she has been in this story since before I was. Brooke was Tristan's college girlfriend, 3 years at University of Oregon. architecture major. Her father owned a boutique firm in Lake Oswego, 4 blocks from the Aldridge house. Her mother ran a winery in Willamette Valley, the kind with exposed beams and Edison bulbs and bottles starting at $42. The Callahans were Carolyn's kind of people, old Portland money. The right neighborhood, the right schools, the right last name. They broke up after college. Timing, distance. Tristan never gave a clear answer. It did not matter. What mattered was that Carolyn never let Brooke go. Every Sunday, wine tasting. Every single one. Brooke just got promoted to director at her father's firm. Is that not wonderful? Brooke's parents are expanding the winery, adding a barrel room. Such vision. Brooke brought the most exquisite tart to the garden party, fig and mascarpone, from scratch. I once brought a store-bought lemon cake to a Sunday gathering. Carolyn looked at it, smiled, and said, "How convenient." She said convenient the way coroners say deceased, factual, final, without hope of appeal. Carolyn had exactly one complaint about me, and she never said it directly. She did not need to. It was louder than anything she ever spoke. I was not Brooke Callahan. I did not have a father with a firm or a mother with a winery. I had a mother with a sewing machine and a father who died buying weather stripping, and Carolyn never, not once in 8 years, let me forget it. Tristan's spine, when it came to his mother, had the structural integrity of overcooked linguine. He never said, "Mom, stop." He never said, "My wife is sitting right here." He just let it happen. Sunday after Sunday. Brooke, Brooke, Brooke. Like Carolyn was running an advertising campaign and the product was a woman who was not me. But I endured. Because that was what Malin had taught me. Endure. Swallow it. Drink the wine. Nod at the cheese card. We bought the house 6 years ago. A craftsman bungalow on Lambert Street in Selwood, southeast Portland. Antique shops, a vintage movie theater, coffee shops where baristas have tattoos and strong opinions about pour-over technique, not Lake Oswego. Carolyn reminded me monthly. Listed at $378,000. 3 bedrooms, original hardwood floors, a front porch swing that creaked. I loved that house the moment I saw it. I loved the creak. I loved how morning light through the kitchen window made the wood glow like honey. I put down $139,800, every cent from Grandma Eileen. The closing felt like documenting a crime scene. Long table, toner-scented office, 43 documents, 2 pens, both names on the deed, but only one of us brought $139,800 to the table. I kept every document, settlement statement, wire confirmation from Columbia Credit Union, estate disbursement letter from Ruth Nakamura, manila folder, filing cabinet, right between auto insurance and dental. Because I am a claims investigator. And a claims investigator always keeps the original documentation. Ruth Nakamura's voice lived in my head rent-free. Protect it like she protected you. Every dollar had a paper trail so clean you could frame it. I just did not know yet how much that trail was going to be worth. For 6 years, things worked. Mostly. Saturday mornings at the Selwood Farmers Market. Sunday afternoons at the Aldridge house, absorbing compliments that felt like paper cuts. Wednesday evenings, Tristan played recreational basketball with other 30-something men who believed they were still athletic. He came home limping and called it a workout. I handed him ice and called it denial. It was not a bad life. It was stable, and I thought the hardest parts were behind me. The cracks did not start with a fight. They started with a deck and a kitchen. And $34,500 that disappeared on a Wednesday while I was at work assessing someone else's damages. I came home on a Wednesday to the sound of a circular saw in my backyard. It was March, about a year and a half ago. I remember it was Wednesday because Wednesday was the day I always stopped at the New Seasons on Southeast Tacoma for groceries. I was holding a bag with frozen salmon and a bunch of cilantro when I walked through the back door and saw 2 men I had never met ripping the boards off my deck like they were unwrapping a gift nobody had asked for. There were sawhorses in my yard, a table saw on my patio, dust on everything. And inside, through the kitchen window, I could see a 3rd man pulling the countertops off the wall. I stood in my own doorway holding frozen fish and watching strangers demolish my home. Tristan came in behind me. He was smiling. The kind of smile people wear when they have done something they know is questionable, but have already committed to selling it as a good idea. He said, "Surprise." Here is the thing about surprises. They are only fun when you are the one doing the surprising. When you come home to find your kitchen gutted and your deck in pieces, it is not a surprise. It is a claim waiting to be filed. The renovation cost $34,500. New composite deck with built-in lighting, quartz countertops, subway tile backsplash, cabinet refinishing, a farmhouse sink Carolyn had selected from a catalog she brought to Sunday wine tasting 3 weeks earlier, dog-eared on page 47. I know because I found the catalog later in Tristan's nightstand. Page 47. Dog-eared. By his mother. Our joint savings account had $71,400 in it. After the deck and the kitchen, it had $36,900. Tristan had authorized the entire project without mentioning it, without a conversation, without asking whether I, the woman who put $139,800 into this house, had any thoughts about spending nearly half our joint savings on a deck and a kitchen his mother picked out of a magazine. I found the number because I am a claims investigator, and claims investigators check account balances the way other people check the weather, reflexively, every morning, with coffee. When I saw the number, I put my mug down very slowly. I did not throw it. I want full credit for that. Tristan, where is $34,500? He was standing at the new quartz island, the one I had not asked for, eating a granola bar like a man who had not just detonated a savings account. Mom recommended the contractor. She said it would add value to the house. She is going to reimburse us, she said. Your mom said. She promised Margot. He caught himself. He sometimes called me Steph when he was nervous. There was no Steph. There had never been a Steph. It was always Margot. But when Tristan felt cornered, his brain reached for a name that was shorter and less complicated, the way he reached for everything that was shorter and less complicated. I want that promise in writing, I said. He looked at me like I had asked him to notarize a blood oath. She is my mother. I am not going to ask my mother for a receipt. Then you just spent $34,500 on your mother's taste without a receipt, without a conversation, and without my consent. You are overreacting. It is an investment. An investment is something you discuss with your partner before you commit the capital. This is an unauthorized expenditure. There is a difference. He stared at me. Can you stop being an investigator for 5 minutes and just be my wife? I did not respond. I went upstairs. I opened my filing cabinet, and for the next 2 hours, I reorganized every single folder. Alphabetized, color-coded, tab-labeled. It took 120 minutes. Every receipt in its place. Every document in its sleeve. It was either that or set something on fire, and I preferred the option that would not affect my homeowner's insurance premium. 7 months later, we had a beautiful kitchen, an expensive deck, and zero reimbursement from Carolyn Aldridge. I brought it up twice. The first time, Tristan changed the subject to his brother's friend's startup that was supposedly going to revolutionize meal kit delivery. It did not. The second time, he said, and I am quoting directly because I wrote it down, "Can we please just move on? It is done. The kitchen is beautiful. My mom has been generous in other ways. Other ways. I am still waiting to identify those other ways. I have reviewed the data extensively. The search continues." That night, after the second conversation about reimbursement went nowhere, I sat at the kitchen table, the quartz kitchen table, Carolyn's kitchen table, and I opened my laptop and looked at the joint savings balance. $36,900, down from $71,400. Because of a deck I did not ask for and a kitchen I did not choose in a house I had paid for with my dead grandmother's life savings. I opened a new folder on my desktop. I did not name it yet. I just saved a screenshot of the savings account balance. Date, time, amount. I did not know what I was building. I did not have a plan or a strategy or a lockbox in the trunk of my car. But something had shifted. Something behind my ribs. Not anger exactly. More like the feeling you get when you are reviewing a claim and the numbers stop adding up and you realize the person across the desk is not telling you the whole story. That screenshot was Exhibit A. I did not call it that yet, but somewhere in the back of my mind, in the part that assesses risk for a living, a case file had just opened itself. The wine tasting party in July was when the case file got its second exhibit. Carolyn hosted it on the 4th of July. The Aldridge house, the usual production. Martin grilled. Carolyn managed. Everyone performed happiness in linen and white denim because Carolyn had once mentioned that white denim was appropriate for summer gatherings, and once Carolyn mentioned something, it became law. I noticed the new addition to the guest list before I noticed the new centerpieces. Brooke Callahan, in person. Not a ghost anymore, not a name dropped between sips of Willamette Valley Pinot. An actual woman standing in Carolyn's kitchen, holding a glass of rosé and laughing at something Martin said about the grill. She was tall, auburn hair, the kind of woman who looks effortless in a way that takes about 90 minutes and several expensive products. She was wearing a sundress that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. I am not a jealous person. I am a claims investigator. I assess risk based on evidence, not feelings. Feelings are unreliable witnesses. Evidence is not. And the evidence that evening was concerning. Carolyn had seated Brooke directly next to Tristan at the outdoor table, not across from him, next to him, close enough that their arms could touch when reaching for the bread basket, and they did touch. 3 times. I counted because that is who I am. Tristan refilled Brooke's wine glass twice before he noticed mine was empty. He laughed at something she said so hard he leaned into her shoulder. Actual physical contact. At a table where his wife was sitting 4 seats away, eating potato salad and cataloging every data point like a human surveillance camera. Carolyn watched the whole thing from the head of the table with the quiet satisfaction of a woman whose experiment was producing exactly the expected results. She caught my eye once. She smiled. It was the kind of smile you see on a person who has just placed a bet and is watching the horses round the final turn. Martin passed me the corn. He did not make eye contact. He knew. Martin always knew. He just never said anything, because saying something would have meant confronting Carolyn, and Martin had not confronted Carolyn since approximately 1989. I drove home in silence. Tristan hummed along to the radio, some song I did not recognize and did not care to. He hummed the way a man hums when he is replaying a pleasant evening in his head, and the pleasant evening he was replaying did not feature his wife. I did not hum. That night, while Tristan was in the shower, I checked his phone. I know. I am aware of what that says about me. I am aware it is not my finest professional moment. But when your husband is humming after leaning into his ex-girlfriend's shoulder at a party, his mother orchestrated like a military operation, you check the phone. You just do. Some things transcend principle. The text with Brooke started that evening at 11:23. He had texted first. It was really great seeing you tonight, she replied at 11:25. Polite, warm. You too. It has been too long. Then Tristan replied again. At 11:23 and 47 seconds. I know the exact interval because the phone records show timestamps down to the minute, and I later cross-referenced with the carrier billing statement that breaks it down further. 47 seconds. He replied in 47 seconds. For context, when I text Tristan to pick up oat milk on his way home from work, the average response time is 4 hours and 11 minutes. I have the data. 14 text messages over 3 months, requesting oat milk. Average response time, 4 hours and 11 minutes. Oat milk apparently does not generate the same urgency as Brooke Callahan, noted. The texts were not explicit. No declarations, no plans, none I could print and highlight and staple to a legal filing. But they were warm, too frequent, too familiar for 2 people who had supposedly moved on a decade ago. Miss talking to you. We should grab coffee sometime. You always knew how to make me laugh. You always knew how to make me laugh. He sent that one at 12:14 in the morning. I was in the next room. I was not making him laugh. I was lying in the dark running probability calculations on the structural integrity of my marriage, and the numbers were not good. I checked his phone twice more over the next month. The texts continued, grew warmer, more frequent, 12 to 15 messages a day. For context, he texted me about twice daily, usually to ask what was for dinner or to say he would be late. The pattern was clear. The trend line was unmistakable. And then I stopped checking. Not because I trusted him, because I had collected enough data points to identify the trajectory, and additional data was not going to alter the conclusion. In my profession, there is a point in every investigation where you stop gathering evidence and start building the case. I had reached that point. I saved the phone bill summary with Brooke's number highlighted, yellow highlighter, clean lines, frequency analysis in the margin. written in my handwriting, which is small and precise because I was trained to write notes that fit in claim file margins. That was Exhibit B. I closed the file on Tristan's phone and opened a new one in my mind. The one that did not have a label yet but felt heavier than anything in my filing cabinet. The one that asked a question I had been avoiding for 7 months, since the day I came home to a circular saw and a $34,500 surprise. What am I going to do? The answer to what am I going to do arrived on a Saturday morning in September, delivered by a 73-year-old Romanian woman in a housecoat and garden clogs. Mrs. Delenko, Irina Delenko, retired bookkeeper for a lumber supply company in Milwaukee, lived next door to us for 11 years, which meant she had been on Lambert Street longer than anyone except the house itself. She spent most of her afternoons sitting on her front porch in a wicker chair with a mug of coffee so strong it could dissolve a spoon, watching the street with the focus of a woman who considered neighborhood surveillance a civic duty. Mrs. Delenko knew everything. She knew when the Newens 3 houses down replaced their mailbox. She knew the exact week the college kid on the corner started learning electric guitar, and she had opinions about his chord progressions. She knew the precise day the for sale sign went up on the Morrison property and predicted the selling price within $4,000. Irina Delenko was a more effective intelligence network than any system my insurance company had ever deployed, and she was powered entirely by dark roast and Romanian stubbornness. That Saturday, I was in the front yard pulling weeds. September in Portland is that last stretch of warmth before the rain comes and does not leave until June. Mrs. Delenko was on her porch, as always. She called over the fence. "Margot, that man with the clipboard. Tuesday. You know about this?" I did not know about this. "What man?" "Tuesday afternoon, 2 o'clock, maybe 2:15. A man, white Subaru Forester. He walked around your house, took photographs of the outside, measured something near the garage, wrote on the clipboard. He was there maybe 20-25 minutes. Then he left." She described him precisely. Medium height, gray jacket, khaki pants, clipboard with a metal clip, not the plastic kind. Mrs. Delenko noticed the clip. Of course she did. Bookkeepers notice details. It is a professional affliction I respect deeply. I thanked her. I went inside. I sat down at the desk in the spare bedroom, the room I used as a home office, and I opened Tristan's email, his personal Gmail, the one he used for everything except work. He had not changed the password yet. It was still Biscuit 2014, the golden retriever. The graduation year, people are remarkably predictable in their password choices, which is both sad and professionally useful. I searched for appraisal. One result. There it was. A completed residential appraisal report from Pacific Crest Valuation Group, dated September 10th. Our house, $459,000. Tristan had ordered it. He had not mentioned it. He had not asked me. Just like the kitchen. Just like the deck. But this was not a renovation. You do not appraise a house because you want new countertops. You appraise a house because you want to know what it is worth. You want to know what your share is worth. And you do that when you are planning to leave. I scrolled down. There was an email chain, 3 messages. The first was from Carolyn Aldridge to Tristan, forwarding a contact. "Richard does excellent work. Very discreet. Tell him I referred you." Very discreet. Carolyn wanted discretion because Carolyn knew exactly what this appraisal was for. She was not just aware of Tristan's exit plan, she was coordinating it, providing resources, managing the logistics of my disposal, the way she managed everything else in that family, quietly, efficiently, and with absolute certainty that she was right. The second email was Tristan to the appraiser, requesting the report. The third was the completed appraisal attached as a PDF. I printed all 3. I printed the appraisal. I printed the forwarding email from Carolyn. I stacked them neatly. I paperclipped them together because staples leave marks and I prefer clean documentation. Exhibit C. The appraisal report. Exhibit D. The email from Carolyn referring the appraiser to Tristan with the word discreet underlined in my mind like a flashing sign. I sat at my desk for a long time. The ceiling fan above me made a clicking sound. Click, click, click. The same clicking I had asked Tristan to fix in April. He never did. He was too busy ordering secret appraisals and texting his ex-girlfriend in 47-second intervals. I opened a new notebook. Not the yellow legal pad I kept in the kitchen drawer. A fresh one. Black cover, College ruled. I bought it at the Office Depot on Southeast Powell 3 days earlier because some part of me had already known I was going to need it. Some part of me had been building toward this moment since the circular saw in the backyard. On the first page, in the top left corner, in handwriting that was steady because I willed it to be, I wrote 2 words, claim number 0001, and below that, a date, September 14th, and below that, a single sentence. Subject has ordered a residential appraisal without the knowledge or consent of the co-owner. Exit strategy confirmed. I closed the notebook. I cleared Tristan's browser history. I went downstairs and made dinner. Baked chicken, roasted broccoli, rice from a bag. When Tristan came home, I asked him how his day was. He said fine. I said good. We ate. He watched something on his phone. I washed the dishes. Normal Tuesday. The most normal Tuesday of my life, and inside my skull, a case file was building itself one exhibit at a time. I needed a lawyer. And in a city the size of Portland, with 750,000 people, you would think finding an attorney who did not share a golf membership with my father-in-law would be straightforward. You would be wrong. Spectacularly, painfully, almost comedically wrong. The first attorney I found was named Kevin Driscoll. He had a corner office on Southwest 5th Avenue in downtown Portland, dark wood desk, framed diplomas, a handshake that suggested he had practiced it in a mirror. He was pleasant, professional, took detailed notes on a yellow legal pad while I sat across from him and explained, in the calm, measured tone of a woman who investigates claims for a living, that my husband was secretly appraising our home, texting his ex-girlfriend, and spending our savings on renovations his mother selected from a catalog. Kevin nodded. Kevin said encouraging things. Kevin told me I had a strong position. I left feeling like I had taken the first real step towards something that looked like a future. 3 days later, Jess called me during my lunch break. Hey, what was the name of that lawyer you went to see? Kevin Driscoll. Why? I looked him up. He is a member of the Portland Golf Club. Okay. Margot. Martin Aldridge is a member of the Portland Golf Club. The silence that followed was not dramatic, it was not cinematic. It was the silence of a woman sitting in a Volvo in the Cascade Pacific Insurance parking lot, realizing that she had just handed the details of her entire exit strategy to a man who possibly, maybe, potentially played 18 holes on Saturday mornings with her father-in-law. I gripped the steering wheel. I did not scream. Screaming is imprecise and does not produce actionable results. I just sat there and did math in my head. Portland Golf Club, annual membership. 472 members. I looked it up later. Martin had been a member for 21 years. Kevin Driscoll's name was on the club directory. I found it online that night. Page 7. Alphabetical. Right between Dominguez and Eberhardt. Exhibit E. The Portland Golf Club membership directory showing both names. Printed, highlighted, filed. For 2 weeks, I did not sleep well. Every time Martin called the house, which he did because Martin was the kind of man who called to discuss the weather, literally the weather, I froze. Was that a normal call? Did he know? Had Kevin mentioned something at the 9th hole between discussing his backswing and my divorce? Was Martin fishing? He was not. I know that now, but those 2 weeks put a decade on me. I checked the mirror every morning and saw a woman who looked like she was running out of something she could not name. Jess found me the second attorney, Sophia Reyes. Small firm in Beaverton, not the Portland Golf Club side of the legal world. The other side, the side where the office furniture does not match and the coffee is made in a machine that has seen better decades, but the woman behind the desk has won more cases than she has lost, and she does not care whether you know it. Sophia was 44. She had a framed photograph of Sonia Sotomayor on her wall that she said was partly ironic and partly a threat. She wore reading glasses on a chain around her neck like a librarian in a film about a librarian who also happens to cross-examine witnesses until they cry. Her handshake was firm. Her eyes were the kind that read you before you finish your first sentence. I liked her immediately. I brought everything. The estate documents from Ruth Nakamura, the bank wire confirmation from Columbia Credit Union, the closing disclosure, the joint account statements showing the $34,500 crater, the phone bill summaries with Brooks' number highlighted in yellow, the appraisal report, Carolyn's referral email, the black notebook with claim number 0001 on the first page, and the golf club membership printout, because at that point I was including everything. I spread it all across Sophia's desk like a crime scene reconstruction. She looked at it for 14 minutes. I timed it. She picked up each document, read it, set it down, picked up the next. She did not speak for 14 minutes. The only sound was paper and the ticking of a wall clock that was 11 minutes fast, which I noticed because I notice everything and it is exhausting. Then she took off her reading glasses, let them hang on the chain, looked at me. Your husband is about to have the worst year of his life, and he does not even know it yet. I did not smile. Okay. I smiled a little. A very small smile. The kind of smile that probably should come with a warning label and a liability waiver. Sophia laid out the strategy. The $139,800 I had used for the down payment was clearly separate property, documented from estate disbursement to personal bank account to wire transfer to title company closing. Never commingled with marital funds, never mixed into a joint account, every dollar traceable, every step documented. In Oregon, when separate property funds are used for a marital asset, the contributing spouse has a strong claim for reimbursement of that contribution off the top of the home equity before any division of the remaining marital property. Then she showed me the math. And the math is where this story stops being sad and starts being satisfying. House appraised value, $459,000. Mortgage balance, $224,400. Total equity, $234,600. My reimbursement claim, $139,800. Remaining marital equity after reimbursement, $94,800. Split that evenly, $47,400 each. My total share of the house equity, $187,200. Tristan's share, $47,400. Tristan thought we would split the equity 50-50. He thought his share was $117,300. He was off by $69,900. Sophia looked at the number and said, "That is not a rounding error. That is a deck and a kitchen renovation." I laughed. A real laugh. The first one in months that did not taste like something bitter. All I had to do was keep compiling, keep the exhibits coming, and wait for Tristan to hand me the evidence himself. Which, because he was Tristan Aldridge, a man who changed passwords to his childhood dog's name and hid appraisals in his primary email account, he absolutely would. Sophia told me to give her 8 to 10 weeks. She needed to file properly, time the petition strategically, and make sure every financial disclosure request was airtight. She used the word airtight 3 times in one meeting. I liked that word. Airtight is a claims investigator's love language. I said I could wait. I had been waiting 8 years. What was 10 more weeks? I went home that evening and made myself a bowl of cereal. The good kind. Cinnamon. The organic one from the co-op on Division that costs $7.20 a box. But I do not care because some things in life should be enjoyed without a cost-benefit analysis. I sat at the kitchen table, the quartz kitchen table, Carolyn's kitchen table, and I ate my cereal, and I looked at the farmhouse sink she had selected from page 47 of a catalog, and I thought, enjoy it. It is the most expensive thing in this room, and it is about to be mine. The next 3 weeks, I built the case file the way my grandmother built her savings account. Slowly, methodically, one deposit at a time. Every Tuesday and Thursday during my lunch break at Cascade Pacific, I drove to the FedEx office on Southeast Division Street. It was 4.3 miles from my office. I timed the drive. 11 minutes without traffic, 14 with. I went so often that the employees started recognizing me. The woman at the self-service printer, a college student with blue hair and a nose ring whose name tag said Kira, once asked me if I was writing a book. I told her I was building a file. She said, "Same energy," and went back to her phone. I appreciated Kira. She did not ask follow-up questions. I printed everything. Joint bank statements, 6 months of them. Highlighted every withdrawal over $500. Savings account statements showing the $34,500 hole that Carolyn Aldridge was never going to fill. The wire confirmation from Columbia Credit Union for the original down payment. The estate disbursement letter from Ruth Nakamura's office. My Fidelity quarterly statements, $61,200, untouched, unmentioned, invisible to anyone who was not me or my brokerage account login. The closing disclosure from the title company, every page of it. Even the ones that were mostly fine print, because I read fine print the way some people read novels. Slowly, and with complete attention. Each document got highlighted. Yellow for financial amounts, pink for dates, green for names. I bought the highlighters at the Office Depot on Southeast Powell. A pack of 12 for $6.49. Office Depot did not know they were supplying materials for the most organized divorce preparation in Multnomah County history, but they were, and their prices were reasonable. Exhibit F. The original estate disbursement letter. Exhibit G. The Columbia Credit Union wire confirmation. Exhibit H. The closing disclosure showing source of down payment. Exhibit I. 6 months of joint checking statements. Exhibit J. 6 months of joint savings statements. Exhibit K. My Fidelity brokerage quarterly statement showing $61,200 in a separate account that had never been touched by Tristan Aldridge or anyone in his family. 6 exhibits in 3 weeks. The lockbox was filling up. Jess came with me once. She sat in the plastic chair next to the self-service printer eating trail mix from a bag she kept in her scrubs pocket, because Jess is a nurse practitioner who works 12-hour shifts in an emergency room, and trail mix is apparently a food group when you spend your days stitching people back together. She watched me print, highlight, sort, label, and file documents into color-coded folders with the focus of a woman defusing a bomb. You know, she said, chewing a cashew, normal people going through a divorce just cry and eat ice cream. I had half-baked last Thursday. Ben & Jerry's? And then what? And then I updated the exhibit log. She stared at me for a long time, chewing slowly, evaluating me the way she evaluates patients who come into the ER saying they are fine while clearly not being fine. You are the most terrifying person I have ever met, she said, and I work in an emergency room. I have seen a man pull a fishhook out of his own eyebrow. I took that as a compliment. When a woman who has seen fishhook eyebrow situations tells you that you are terrifying, you are doing something right. Every time I opened that lockbox in the trunk of my Volvo, parked in the driveway of a house my grandmother's money had paid for, I felt something. Not anger, not sadness, something more like clarity, like a lens adjusting. Like the moment in an investigation when the scattered data points stop being noise and start forming a pattern, and you realize you are not confused anymore. You are just waiting for the picture to finish developing. Okay, hold on. Before I keep going, I want to ask you something. If you are still listening right now, if you are still here, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is there. I read every single one. Seriously. I see you 2 in the morning people. I see you lunch break people. I see you pretending to work people. I respect all of you equally. Now, back to this disaster. The lockbox was almost full, exhibits A through K. 11 pieces of evidence, labeled, organized, cross-referenced in the black notebook under claim number 0001. 11 exhibits documenting a marriage that was dissolving one secret at a time. And then Tristan did something that made Sophia laugh out loud on the phone when I told her. He changed the password. Tristan's childhood dog was named Biscuit, a golden retriever, because of course it was a golden retriever. The Aldridges were exactly the kind of family that would have a golden retriever named Biscuit. They probably had a Christmas card with Biscuit wearing a Santa hat. I never saw the card, but I am certain it existed. The reason I know about Biscuit is because on a Thursday evening in October, while Tristan was at his recreational basketball game, the one where a group of 37-year-old men pretend they still have functioning knees and then spend the rest of the week complaining about their backs, I sat down at the desk in the spare bedroom and tried to log into our joint investment account at Vanguard. The password did not work. I tried it again. Nothing. I tried every variation I could think of. Our anniversary, his birthday, my birthday, the street we lived on, the year we bought the house, the name of his college fraternity, which I will not repeat because some things are too embarrassing even for a legal filing. Then I tried Biscuit. Biscuit 2014. Biscuit with an exclamation point. Biscuit capital B. Biscuit lowercase. Every permutation of a dead golden retriever's name combined with every significant number in Tristan Aldridge's life. Nothing. That login screen stared back at me. The cursor blinked. Blink, blink, blink. Very judgmental cursor. The kind of cursor that knows you are locked out and is enjoying it. There are moments in a situation like this where you want to throw something. The laptop snapped shut under my hands before I even decided to close it. I walked to the kitchen, the $34,500 kitchen. I opened the refrigerator, the expensive one with the French doors that Carolyn had selected, and I stood there with the door open for 30 seconds, letting cold air hit my face because sometimes the most expensive appliance in your house is also the most therapeutic. Then I ate 3 string cheeses, one after another, standing in front of the open refrigerator like a woman who has lost control of exactly one thing in her life and has decided it will be dairy consumption. Then I called Sophia. I expected concern. I got something better. Margot. Her voice had that tone, the one she used right before saying something that made me feel foolish for worrying. What your husband just did is a gift. It does not feel like a gift. He locked you out of a joint account. A joint account, Margot, both names on it, and he changed the password unilaterally during a period when, as we can now document, he was already planning a divorce. Do you know what a judge thinks when they see that? That it is bad? That it is evidence of financial concealment. I can subpoena those records directly from Vanguard. And when the filing lands, and it will land, the fact that he locked you out becomes part of the pattern. The renovation without consent. The secret appraisal. The hidden texts. And now this. Pattern, Margot. Judges love patterns. They love patterns almost as much as they hate husbands who think they are smarter than they are. She filed the subpoena request that week. Vanguard would send paper statements directly to her office. 13 business days. I counted each one. Claims investigators count things. It is a professional requirement and a personality condition. Exhibit L. A screenshot of the login screen with the access denied error message. Date, time, exact wording. Saved, printed, highlighted, filed. Exhibit M. The subpoena request to Vanguard for joint account records. Evidence is not just what you find, it is what someone tries to stop you from finding. Now, the private investigator. I need to tell you about the private investigator because this is the part where Carolyn Aldridge accidentally became my best supporting witness. About 2 weeks after the password incident, I was reviewing Tristan's credit card statement, not his personal card, the joint Visa we used for household expenses. I reviewed it monthly because I am me. Most of it was predictable. Gas, groceries. His gym membership, $49 a month for a gym he visited approximately twice. A subscription to a streaming service he swore he had canceled but had not. And then, line item. October 28th, Cascade Investigations, LLC, $3,800. I read it twice. I put down my coffee. I picked it up, put it down again, picked it up and drank the entire mug in one go because some revelations require immediate caffeine. Cascade Investigations is a private investigation firm. I looked them up, based in Tigard, specializing in, among other things, domestic surveillance. Carolyn Aldridge had hired a private investigator to follow me. She thought I was the one with secrets. She thought I was the one stepping out. She had paid $3,800 of our joint credit card to prove that I, the woman who spends her Tuesday lunches at FedEx printing bank statements, was somehow living a double life. The investigator's report, which I obtained later through discovery, was 4 pages long. It concluded that subject, meaning me, maintained a consistent daily routine with no evidence of extramarital contact or suspicious behavior. 4 pages to say she goes to work, goes to FedEx, goes home, and eats string cheese. Carolyn Aldridge paid $3,800 to prove I was faithful. I could have told her that for free, but I appreciated the documentation, truly. From the bottom of my evidence-loving heart, Exhibit N. The credit card statement showing the payment to Cascade Investigations, highlighted in yellow, filed next to the Vanguard subpoena. L. M. N. More than halfway through the alphabet. 14 exhibits and counting. And Tristan Aldridge still had no idea that there was a case file with his name on it, organized by letter, cross-referenced by date, sitting in a $39 lockbox in the trunk of a Volvo, parked in the driveway of a house he thought was half his. I do not have Instagram. I deleted it in 2021 because it was making me compare my life to the curated highlight reels of people I barely knew, and I decided I preferred to judge people in person where the lighting is honest and nobody has a filter. It was one of the better decisions I have made, right up there with keeping my grandmother's money in a separate account and choosing a lawyer who does not belong to the Portland Golf Club. Jess, however, has Instagram the way some people have a pulse, constantly and without conscious effort. She checks it during lunch breaks, during slow moments at the hospital, during conversations with me, and once, memorably, during a movie we were watching together. She said she was checking for an emergency. The emergency was that someone she went to high school with had gotten a new puppy. Jess has a complicated relationship with boundaries and social media, and I have accepted this. On a Tuesday afternoon in late October, Jess walked over to my desk at Cascade Pacific with her phone screen facing me and a look on her face that I recognized. It was the look she had when she was about to show me something that would ruin a perfectly adequate day. Your mother-in-law posted something. She handed me the phone. On the screen was Carolyn Aldridge's Instagram page. The most recent post was a photograph taken at the Aldridge dining room table. I recognized the table. I recognized the chandelier. I recognized the wine glasses because Carolyn had once spent 15 minutes at a Sunday tasting, explaining why she had chosen that particular crystal pattern from a shop in Lake Oswego that sold stemware the way some places sell cars with financing options. In the photograph, Carolyn was seated at the head of the table. Martin was to her left, and to her right, next to each other, close enough that their shoulders were touching, were Tristan and Brooke Callahan. Brooke was sitting in the chair I usually sat in. My chair, the one next to the window with the slightly uneven leg that Carolyn had never bothered to fix because it was my chair, and fixing it would have been an act of hospitality she had not authorized. The caption read, "Blessed evening with family and dear friends." Family and dear friends. I was neither of those things, apparently. I was not even in the room. I was at home, eating leftover soup in a kitchen I had paid for, believing my husband was at his father's house fixing a broken sprinkler system. The sprinkler system. I confirmed later that it worked perfectly. Martin used it every Thursday to water his side garden. The sprinkler system had never been broken. The sprinkler system was a lie, and it was not even a creative one. Jess was watching me. "You okay?" "I am adding it to the file." That is not what I asked. "I know." I looked at the photograph one more time. Blessed evening. 8 years, and I was not even in the caption. 8 years of Sunday tastings, of cheese boards I complimented and wine I pretended to enjoy, and compliments from Carolyn that left marks I could not show anyone. 8 years, and when the evening was truly blessed, I was not invited. I closed my eyes for 3 seconds. 3 seconds is all I allow myself when something threatens to crack the surface. 3 seconds of darkness behind my eyelids, and then I open them and I am a claims investigator again. "I will be okay," I said. "I just have to finish this first." During my lunch break, I drove to the Volvo, opened the trunk, opened the lockbox, put in the printed screenshot of Carolyn's Instagram post, closed the lockbox, closed the trunk, went back to work, processed a liability claim for a restaurant in the Pearl District that had a customer slip on a wet floor, went home, made dinner, rice, chicken, frozen edamame, normal evening, Exhibit O. The Instagram screenshot, blessed evening with my favorite people, filed between the PI payment and what came next. What came next was the iPad. Tristan and I shared an iPad. It sat on the kitchen counter, mostly unused except when one of us wanted to look up a recipe or watch something while cooking. I rarely touched it. But that Wednesday evening, while Tristan was supposedly at basketball, I picked it up to look for a soup recipe and a calendar notification popped up on the screen. Thursday, November 7th, 2:15 in the afternoon. Whitfield Financial Advisory. Consultation. Tristan Aldridge. A financial advisor. Not our financial advisor, because we did not have one together. A new one. One I had never heard of. One Tristan had booked on his own on a Thursday afternoon for a consultation. You do not book a solo consultation with a financial advisor when your marriage is fine. You book one when you are planning what your life looks like after. When you want someone to help you organize what you think you are going to walk away with. Exhibit P. A screenshot of the calendar notification. Date, time, name, address, filed. I went back to the soup recipe. Butternut squash. I made it. It was decent. Tristan came home at 8:35. He kissed me on the forehead, the kind of kiss that is more punctuation than affection, a period at the end of a sentence he had stopped caring about finishing. He smelled like something, not his usual cologne. Something warmer, sweeter, fig. I knew that smell. Carolyn's diptyque candle. The fig one. Figuier. $72 for a candle. I knew the price because Carolyn had mentioned it once, casually, the way people mention things that cost $72 when they want you to know that $72 is not a significant amount to them. Tristan had not been at basketball. He had been at his mother's house, probably with Brooke, and he had come home to me smelling like a $72 candle from a house where I was no longer welcome. I did not say a word. I washed the dishes. I dried them. I went to bed. I lay in the dark, 6 inches from a man who thought he was the one with a plan, and I thought about the lockbox in the trunk and the exhibits stacking up like a hand of cards I had not yet played. OP16 exhibits. The alphabet was running out of room before Tristan was running out of secrets. Almost. We were almost there. The mistake was mine, 100% mine. And it happened over a glass of Pinot Noir at Carolyn Aldridge's Sunday wine tasting on the first weekend of November. The usual production: Carolyn's cheese board, Martin's silence, Tristan's brother-in-law Craig talking about refinancing his condo in Tigard, Craig's wife Lauren chasing their 2 kids through the living room while trying to maintain the appearance of someone who was relaxed. Nobody in the Aldridge house was ever relaxed. Relaxation was not on the approved activity list. The conversation turned to real estate. It always did eventually. In Portland, talking about real estate is a competitive sport. Everyone had opinions. Martin said something about interest rates. Carolyn said something about staging. Craig said something about his HOA fees. Tristan said something about equity. And I said, yeah, well at 459 you would want to list in spring for maximum exposure. I stopped mid-breath, like someone had reached into my chest and unplugged something essential. 459. The appraised value of our house. The appraisal Tristan had ordered in secret. The appraisal I was never supposed to know existed. The appraisal that was sitting in a lockbox in the trunk of my Volvo labeled Exhibit C. The table went quiet for half a second. Lauren was telling one of her kids to stop hiding cheese in his pocket. Craig was reaching for his wine. Carolyn was adjusting a napkin. But Tristan heard it. I saw his eyes change. Not dramatically, not the way it happens in movies where the music swells and someone gasps. It was smaller than that, a narrowing, a flicker. The look a dog gives when it hears a frequency it cannot quite identify. He was not sure what he had heard. But he knew he had heard something. 459, he said. Casual, almost too casual. The way a man speaks when he is trying very hard not to sound like he is asking the question he is actually asking. Selwood values, generally. My voice was steady, my hands were not. I put them in my lap under the table where nobody could see them. I read an article in the Oregonian about the fall market. He nodded, went back to his wine. The conversation moved on. Craig talked about property taxes. Martin complained about the cost of boat storage. Everything returned to normal. Except it did not, because I could feel it. That shift, that vibration in the air between 2 people, when one of them knows the other knows something they should not know. It is the hum before the beep, the click before the ceiling fan starts, the pause before a claim gets denied. I drove home with my jaw clenched so tight I thought I would crack something expensive. Dental work is not cheap and my insurance covers 80% at best. The next morning, I called Sophia from the Cascade Pacific parking lot, 7:45 in the morning. She answered on the second ring because Sophia Reyes is the kind of attorney who is already working before most people have found their coffee mugs. I told her I had accidentally referenced the appraised value in front of Tristan. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Not ideal, but not fatal. Just do not give him anything else." I did not plan to. But Tristan had other plans. 48 hours later, a Tuesday. Because apparently every catastrophic event in my life is contractually obligated to occur on a Tuesday. My father died on a Tuesday. I discovered the deck renovation on a Wednesday, but the contractor had started on a Tuesday. The text with Brooke started on a Tuesday. Tuesdays are my personal villain. I checked the joint savings account during my morning coffee. It was reflex, same as every morning. Open the app, look at the number, close the app, drink the coffee. Except that morning the number was wrong. The balance should have been $36,900. It was $27,500. Tristan had moved $9,400 out of the savings account. Not into checking. Not into any account I could see. Just gone. Transferred somewhere invisible. I put my coffee down. Picked it up. Put it down again. Went to the bathroom. Gripped the edge of the sink. Looked at myself in the mirror. My mother's eyes looked back at me. Maylin's eyes. The eyes of a woman who had been told to endure so many times she had almost forgotten there were other options. "You are going to be fine," I said to no one. Then I sat on the edge of the bathtub and did not feel fine. Not for about 20 minutes. My hands were shaking. Which annoyed me because shaking hands produce unreliable data, and I am a person who values precision above almost everything except possibly cinnamon cereal and well-organized filing cabinets. Something in me went quiet, not calm, offline, like a system rebooting after a crash. The fan above me clicked. Click, click, click. The one Tristan never fixed. At 36 years old, I had already survived a dead father, a broke childhood, a mixed-race identity in a state that smiled politely while deciding what box to put you in, and a professional licensing exam that made me cry in a Starbucks on Southeast Hawthorne while a barista named Dylan asked if I wanted a refill. This man was not going to be the thing that broke me on a bathtub in Selwood. I called Sophia, told her about the $9,400. I expected concern. I got the second-best sentence she had ever said to me. "Margot, what your husband just did is called dissipation of marital assets, to move joint funds into a hidden account during a period when divorce proceedings are imminent. Do you know what judges in Multnomah County think about that? That it is bad. They hate it. They have seen it 400 times and they are exhausted by it. He just handed you Exhibit Q on a silver platter." Exhibit Q, the savings account screenshot showing the $9,400 withdrawal. Date, time, amount, destination unknown. Filed in the lockbox next to the PI payment and the Instagram screenshot and the password denial and every other piece of evidence that Tristan Aldridge had been generous enough to create for me. I sat on my bathtub and laughed. Not the joyful kind. The kind that sounds like a cough and feels like a cramp. The kind where your body cannot decide if it is relieved or hysterical and splits the difference. Sophia accelerated the timeline. 2 more weeks became 9 days. I could do 9 days. I had done 8 years with the Aldridges. 9 days was a vacation. 9 days was a spa weekend compared to 8 years of how multicultural and how convenient and Brooks fig and mascarpone tart. 9 days. I could do anything for 9 days. My mother arrived on a Thursday morning. She drove from Gresham, 40 minutes on a good day, 53 on this one because there was construction on Powell Boulevard, and my mother drives the speed limit in every lane, including the passing lane, and has never once apologized for it. She brought oolong tea in a thermos she has owned since 1998. She brought scallion pancakes in a Tupperware container with a lid that does not quite close anymore, but she refuses to replace because, in her words, it still works. Maylin does not replace things that still work. She repairs them. She adjusts. She endures. She also brought a bag of tangerines because she always brings tangerines. I do not know why. I have never asked. Some things between a mother and a daughter do not require explanation. They just exist, like gravity or the understanding that you do not touch the thermos. I had not told her anything. Not about Tristan, not about Brooke, not about the deck or the kitchen or the appraisal or the lockbox in the trunk of my car. I had told her nothing because telling Maylin meant hearing the word endure again, and I was not sure I could hear that word one more time without breaking something important inside myself. She knew anyway. Mothers know. Maylin knew the way she knows when a seam is about to split before the thread shows any sign of strain. She reads tension the way she reads fabric, with her hands and her silence and 30 years of practice. We sat in my kitchen, the $34,500 kitchen. She looked at the quartz countertops. She looked at the farmhouse sink. She ran her hand along the edge of the island, the way she runs her hand along fabric when she is assessing quality. She did not say anything about the kitchen. She did not need to. Maylin has opinions about things that cost more than they should, and she expresses them through silence more effectively than most people express them through words. She poured tea. She pushed a scallion pancake toward me. She waited. My mother is the most patient person I have ever known. She once waited 45 minutes for a customer to decide between two shades of navy blue thread. She did not rush. She did not suggest. She just stood there with both spools in her hands until the woman chose. That is Maylin. She waits until you are ready, and then she waits a little longer just in case you are not. I was not ready. And then I was. I told her everything. I started with the deck, and I ended with the $9,400. And somewhere in the middle, my voice did something it does not usually do. It cracked. Just a little. A hairline fracture in the steady tone I had been maintaining for 5 months. 5 months of exhibits and lockboxes and legal strategy and controlled breathing, and not once, not one single time, had I let the surface crack. It cracked for my mother. Because some things only break in the presence of the one person you trust enough to let them see it. Maylin listened. She did not interrupt. She did not gasp. She did not say, "I told you so," or "How could he," or any of the things people say when they are performing the role of supportive listener. She just listened, her hands wrapped around the thermos, her eyes on mine, steady, like thread through a needle. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. She looked out the kitchen window. The morning light was coming through the glass the way it always did, turning the hardwood floors golden. The same light I had fallen in love with when we first saw this house. The same light that had made me think this could be home. Then my mother spoke. She started in Taiwanese. A few words I recognized from childhood, from the kitchen in Gresham, from the back room of Perfect Fit where she talked to herself while sewing. Words that do not have clean English translations. Words that live in the space between languages where meaning is felt more than understood. Then she switched to English, and she said the most important thing anyone has ever said to me. "Margot, I spent 30 years telling you to endure. Your father died and I said endure. The children at school pulled their eyes and I said endure. Carolyn looked at you like you were less and I would have said endure. I was wrong." She paused. Her hands tightened on the thermos. "Your grandmother Eileen did not save that money so you could be small. She saved it so you could be safe. And safe does not mean staying in a house where a man tells his mother you are not enough. Be big, Margot. Be the size she always knew you were." I did not move. I did not breathe. The kitchen was silent except for the refrigerator humming and the sound of my mother's hands on a thermos from 1998. Be big, Margot. Be the size she always knew you were. 3 generations of women in one sentence. Eileen, who saved every dollar. Maylin, who sewed every seam. And me, sitting in a kitchen that someone else chose, in a house my grandmother paid for, finally hearing the one thing I did not know I needed to hear. Not endure. Not this time. I reached across the table and put my hands over hers. I do not know how long we stayed like that. Long enough for the oolong to go cold. Long enough for the morning light to shift from gold to white. Long enough for something inside me to move from one place to another, like a needle pulling thread through fabric, closing a seam I had not known was open. When I let go, something had changed. Not from sad to angry. Not from broken to fixed. From waiting to ready. That evening, after Maylin drove back to Gresham with her thermos and her empty Tupperware and her tangerines that I had eaten 3 of, I drove to the Volvo. I opened the trunk. I opened the lockbox. And I added the final exhibits. Exhibit S. The Vanguard paper statements that had finally arrived at Sophia's office after 13 business days. Joint brokerage balance, $43,800. Exhibit T. Sophia's forensic accountant had identified a separate savings account in Tristan's name only, funded through a series of small deposits over 4 months. Balance, $15,600. His parents had helped set it up. Of course they had. Exhibit U. A consolidated financial summary prepared by Sophia's office showing every account, every transfer, every hidden dollar, every documented act of concealment. I closed the lockbox. It was heavy now. 21 exhibits, A through U, but the most important exhibit was not paper. It was not a screenshot or a bank statement or a subpoena. It was Exhibit R. And Exhibit R was my mother sitting in a kitchen that cost $34,500, holding a thermos from 1998, telling me to stop being small. The case file was complete. 21 exhibits documented. 5 more implied. 5 months of work, and a woman who was done waiting. The night everything ended started on a Thursday, December 5th. The sky was the color of wet concrete, which in Portland is not weather, it is personality. Tristan came home at 6:20. I was in the kitchen. The $34,500 kitchen. Yes, I will never stop mentioning that. I was washing a pot. Something ordinary. Something forgettable. The kind of moment that should not carry any weight at all but carries all of it because of what happened next. He dropped his keys on the quartz countertop. That sound, metal on stone, I will hear it for the rest of my life. It is the sound of a man who is about to say something he practiced in the car and has not quite memorized. He did not sit down. He stood by the island, arms crossed, and he had a face I had never seen before. Not angry, not sad, rehearsed. The expression of a man who has been coached, who has run through this speech in his head or maybe out loud in the BMW on the drive home, and who is now standing in his kitchen trying to remember his opening line. I have seen that face before. At work. In my office. It is the face of a person filing a claim they know is fraudulent. They have practiced their story. They have prepared their evidence. But they are not good actors, and the rehearsal shows in the way they hold their shoulders too high and blink slightly too often. Tristan blinked 3 times before he spoke. Margot, we need to talk. In the history of the English language, no one has ever said we need to talk and followed it with good news. It has never once preceded I got us tickets to Hawaii. It is always bad. The only variable is the scale. He did the speech. And I am going to tell you what he said, word for word, because you deserve to hear it the way I heard it, standing in a kitchen I paid for, holding a dish towel that was still damp. My family thinks. My family has always felt that you were not, that we were not the right fit. My parents, they have tried, Margot. They really have. But they feel like I settled, and I do not want to embarrass them anymore. I do not want to disappoint them. He paused. He swallowed. He looked at the floor, at the hardwood, the original hardwood I had fallen in love with 6 years ago. I do not think I ever really loved you. Not the way I should have, not the way I loved her. Her. He did not say Brooke's name. He did not need to. Her. The woman with the winery parents and the architecture career and the fig and mascarpone tart. Her. The woman who was not me. The kitchen was quiet. The refrigerator hummed. The expensive one with the French doors that Carolyn selected. $34,500 of hum. Tristan was waiting. I could see it. He was waiting for the reaction he had prepared for. Tears. A scream. A plate thrown against the subway tile backsplash. Something dramatic. Something emotional. Something that would confirm the narrative he had already written in his head. The one where I fell apart and he walked away and his mother was right all along and Brooke was waiting with open arms and a pharmacy an architecture degree and a winery and a last name that fit on the Aldridge mantle like it had always belonged there. I looked at him. I looked at the quartz countertop his mother chose. I looked at the farmhouse sink from page 47. I looked at the man who had just told me, in a kitchen my grandmother's money built, that he never loved me. And I said 2 words. Claim denied. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the ceiling fan clicking. The one he never fixed. Click, click, click. What? He said. You heard me. My voice was level. Not cold, not angry. Level. The voice I use when I am delivering a determination on a disputed claim. Professional, final, without appeal. You just filed a claim on 8 years of my life. In a kitchen I paid for, in a house my grandmother's money built, with your ex-girlfriend's number in your phone and your mother's voice in your head, claim denied. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He looked like a man who had walked into a room expecting one conversation and found himself in a completely different one, a conversation he had not rehearsed. A conversation where the woman across from him was not crying. Margot, I am going to go pack some things. I went upstairs. I packed 2 suitcases. Not everything, just the essentials, clothes, toiletries. The important folders from my filing cabinet, the ones between auto insurance and dental, the ones that held the original documents whose copies were already sitting in a lockbox in the trunk of a Volvo that was about to become the most important vehicle in Multnomah County family court. And the framed photograph of my father, Patrick Sullivan. The postal carrier who died buying weather stripping and who would have never, not in 1,000 lifetimes, told my mother she was not enough. It took 40 minutes. I am an efficient packer. Claims investigators do not overpack. We assess what is needed and we leave the rest. Tristan stood in the bedroom doorway for part of it. He kept saying things. That I did not have to do this tonight, that we could talk about it, that he was sorry, that he did not mean it the way it sounded. He said words that would have meant something if he had said them any time in the last 3 years. Instead, he said them while I was folding a sweater into a suitcase, and they landed between us like coins dropped on the floor. Not worthless exactly. Just too late to spend. I carried the suitcases downstairs, through the kitchen, past the quartz, past the farmhouse sink, out the front door, down the porch steps, the ones that creaked, the creak I had loved the first day I saw this house. The suitcases went into the Volvo, next to the lockbox. The lockbox he did not know about. 26 exhibits, 5 months of clarity packed into a $39 box from Home Depot. Tristan said he was going to his mother's house. Of course he was. Carolyn had dinner ready. Carolyn always had dinner ready when her son needed to run from something. Pot roast as emotional evasion. It was her specialty, right after passive aggression and interior decorating. He left at 7:10. I stood in the driveway and watched the BMW pull out, $624 a month of taillights disappearing down Lambert Street. The leased car driving toward the mother who had spent 8 years building the case against me. They deserved each other. The street was quiet. December quiet. Portland quiet. The kind of quiet that is mostly rain deciding whether or not to start. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds. Then I got in my car. I put my hands on the steering wheel. I looked in the rearview mirror at the house on Lambert Street. The porch light was still on. I had forgotten to turn it off. I did not go back to turn it off. Some lights you just leave behind. I drove to Jess's apartment in Northeast Portland, Alberta District. Second floor of a converted Victorian that smelled like eucalyptus and slightly burnt toast because Jess owns a diffuser and has a complicated relationship with her toaster. I had not called ahead. I did not need to. Jess is the kind of friend who does not require advance notice for emergencies. She requires only that you show up and that you do not lie about how you are feeling, which is harder than it sounds. She opened the door in scrubs. Blue ones. The ones with the small coffee stain on the left pocket that she has never managed to get out, despite being a medical professional who should theoretically understand stain removal. She looked at me. She looked at the 2 suitcases. She did not ask a single question. She handed me a glass of wine, red, something inexpensive. She pointed at the couch. I sat. She sat next to me. We were quiet for a while. The apartment was warm. Her cat, a gray tabby named Objection, because Jess thinks she is funny, jumped onto the arm of the couch and stared at me with the detached judgment that only cats and Carolyn Aldridge are capable of. He said it? Jess asked finally. He said it. The speech? The whole production. Family disappointed. Never loved me. The full Aldridge experience. Jess was quiet for a moment. And what did you say? Claim denied. She stared at me. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed, then opened again. Then she laughed. Not a polite laugh, a real one. The kind that starts in the chest and takes over the whole body and does not care about volume or neighbors or the fact that it was after 9 o'clock on a Thursday night. Claim denied, she repeated, shaking her head. You actually said claim denied. I did. To his face. To his face. In the kitchen. The $34,500 kitchen. The very one. She laughed again. Then she hugged me. Hard. The kind of hug that does not ask permission and does not let go until it is ready. Jess gives hugs the way she gives medical advice, aggressively and without apology. When she let go, she looked at me with wet eyes and said, I am so proud of you. And also, you are insane. But mostly proud. I drank the wine. It was not good wine. It was the kind of wine that costs $9 and exists primarily to serve a function rather than provide an experience. It was perfect. At 9:35, my phone rang. The screen showed a name I did not expect, Martin Aldridge. I almost did not answer. Almost. But Martin had never called me directly before, not once in 8 years. Martin communicated through Carolyn the way most of us communicate through language, indirectly and with a lot lost in translation. For Martin to call me himself, on this night meant something had shifted in the Aldridge house, something Carolyn had not authorized. I answered, "Margot, it is Martin." His voice was different. Not the careful, measured voice I knew from Sunday wine tastings, not the agreeable murmur of a man who had spent decades choosing silence over conflict. This voice was older somehow, thinner, like fabric that has been washed too many times. "Tristan came over for dinner," he told us. He did not tell us much. He never tells us much. That sounded right. Tristan had never been specific about anything except his dissatisfaction. "But I need you to know something, Margot. And I should have said it a long time ago, years ago. I should have said it the first Sunday you walked into our house and Carolyn made that comment about your dress." I remembered the comment. Year 1. A Sunday tasting. I had worn a green dress my mother had altered for me. Carolyn had looked at it and said, "What an adventurous color choice. Adventurous." Like I had shown up wearing a parachute. "Carolyn has done this before," Martin said. His voice was shaking now. Not dramatically, just enough to hear the seams pulling apart. Before Tristan brought you home, there was a woman. Her name was Patricia. She was a teacher. 2nd grade. Milwaukee Elementary. I was going to marry her, Margot, 35 years ago. I was going to marry Patricia. The room shifted. Not physically, something deeper, like a foundation settling. Carolyn's mother, Eleanor, she did not approve. Patricia came from a working family. Her father was a mechanic, her mother was a secretary. Eleanor decided Patricia was not sufficient for the Aldridge name. And Carolyn, she learned it from her mother the way some people learn recipes. She learned how to remove a woman from a man's life so slowly he thinks it was his own idea. Martin paused. I could hear him breathing. She drove Patricia away. The same way. The comments. The comparisons. The other woman she kept bringing around, a woman named Diane from a family Eleanor approved of. And I let it happen, Margot. I told myself it was different. It was not different. It was the same playbook. And I watched her do it to you for 8 years. And I said nothing, because I am a coward. I have been a coward my entire marriage. The word hung in the air. Coward. A man calling himself what he had always been, out loud, on a Thursday night, too late to change anything but early enough to mean something. "You deserved better," he said. "From Tristan, from Carolyn, from all of us, but especially from me, because I knew. I always knew." My throat went tight. My eyes burned. I bit the inside of my cheek hard enough to taste copper. "Thank you, Martin." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "For what it is worth, you were always the best thing in that house. And I think you know that." I hung up. I sat on Jess's couch. Objection, the cat had moved to my lap at some point and was purring with the indifference of a creature who has never once worried about property division or emotional betrayal. I envied him. I did not cry. But it was close. Closer than I had been in 5 months of exhibits and legal pads and FedEx office runs and lockbox trips and controlled breathing. 5 months of holding everything together with precision and documentation and the professional detachment of a woman who investigates claims for a living. The cruelty I could handle. 8 years of Carolyn's comments, Tristan's silence, Brooke's shadow. I could handle all of it. I had handled it. I had filed it. I had labeled it and highlighted it and put it in a $39 box. But the unexpected kindness. One honest sentence from a quiet man who had never been brave enough to say it before. That was the dangerous thing. Cruelty builds walls. Kindness finds the crack. I closed my eyes. I thought about the lockbox in the trunk. 26 exhibits. I thought about Sophia, who was probably still awake, reviewing filings with black coffee and the quiet ferocity of a woman with Sonia Sotomayor on her wall. I thought about my mother, asleep in Gresham, the thermos washed and put away, the Tupperware back in the cabinet with its lid that does not quite close. Tomorrow it all lands. Sophia Reyes filed at 8:47 the next morning. I know the exact time because she texted me a screenshot of the confirmation. 8:47, with a single emoji, a check mark. Sophia is not an emoji person. The check mark meant more than any paragraph could have. The filing included 4 documents: a petition for dissolution of marriage, a motion for a temporary financial restraining order preventing either party from moving, transferring, hiding, or dissipating any marital assets, a reimbursement claim for $139,800 in separate property contribution to the marital home, supported by the complete chain of documentation, from estate disbursement to bank deposit to wire transfer to closing disclosure, and a forensic accounting report detailing every financial irregularity discovered over the previous 5 months. Attached to the forensic report were 26 exhibits, A through Z, each one labeled, each one dated, each one highlighted in the appropriate color, yellow for amounts, pink for dates, green for names, because I am a claims investigator and presentation matters. By 10:15 in the morning, the temporary restraining order was in place. Everything was frozen. The joint checking account, the joint savings account, what was left of it. The Vanguard joint brokerage account, $43,800, the house on Lambert Street. And the hidden savings account in Tristan's name only, the one his parents had helped him set up over 4 months of careful small deposits, balance $15,600. Frozen. All of it. Frozen solid on a December morning in Portland, which felt appropriate because everything in Portland in December is frozen, or at least very, very wet. Tristan had already retained his own attorney, Mark Calloway, experienced family law practitioner, office on Southwest Morrison in downtown Portland. I had suspected this for weeks, ever since the appraisal. You do not order a secret appraisal and change passwords and consult a financial advisor unless someone with a law degree is telling you to. Mark Calloway had probably told Tristan he would walk away with half the equity. Clean split, simple math, handshake and done. Mark Calloway had not met my math yet. At 2:15 in the afternoon, Mark Calloway received the full filing package from Sophia's office. The petition, the restraining order, the reimbursement claim, the forensic report, and the 26 exhibits, every single one, A through Z. 5 months of documentation assembled by a woman who spent her professional life evaluating evidence and who had applied that skill to the most important claim she had ever filed. He called Sophia 20 minutes later. She called me immediately after. Mark Calloway just called, she said. Her voice had that tone. The one that was professional on the surface but thoroughly enjoying itself underneath, like a cat that has just knocked a glass off a table and is watching it fall. He reviewed the filing. The reimbursement claim, the separate property trace, the forensic report, the exhibits, all 26 of them. He did the math, Margot. What did he say? Sophia paused. I could hear her smiling through the phone, which should not be possible, but with Sophia it absolutely is. He said, and I am paraphrasing only slightly, "Where did she? How long has she?" And then he stopped, and then he started again, and then he said, 5 months? And I said, 5 months, Mark. She is a claims investigator. This is literally what she does for a living. I sat in Jess's kitchen. Objection was on the counter, which Jess allows because she has given up on boundaries with that cat the same way Martin Aldridge gave up on boundaries with Carolyn. I scratched behind his ear. He tolerated it. What about the numbers? I asked. He did the numbers. House appraised at $459,000. Mortgage balance $224,400. Total equity $234,600. Your reimbursement claim for $139,800 comes off the top. Remaining marital equity, $94,800. Split evenly, $47,400 each. Your total share, $187,200. Tristan's total share, $47,400. And Tristan thought he was getting $117,300. He was off by $69,900. Mark did not take that well. How did he take it? I have heard happier tones at funerals, Margot, and I have been to a lot of lawyer funerals. We do not handle death well as a profession. The $9,400 Tristan had moved into the hidden account, documented dissipation of marital assets, Exhibit Q, on the record. The judge would look at that the way a teacher looks at a student who copied someone else's homework and did not even bother to change the font. Not angry, just profoundly disappointed in such a specifically stupid way. The hidden savings account, $15,600. His parents helped him set it up, identified by forensic accounting through deposit pattern analysis. Frozen, on the record, Exhibit T. The private investigator. $3,800 charged to our joint credit card. Carolyn's idea. Carolyn's execution. Carolyn's backfire. Documented proof that I was faithful, funded with marital money, ordered by the mother of a man who was actively texting his ex-girlfriend. Exhibit N, on the record. The password change on the Vanguard account. Financial concealment of a joint asset. Exhibit L, on the record. Every single exhibit was on the record. Every highlighted line. Every time-stamped screenshot. Every paperclip document from every Tuesday and Thursday lunch break at the FedEx office on Southeast Division Street. Tristan Aldridge, who had stood in my kitchen 12 hours earlier and told me that his family thought I was never good enough, who had told me he never really loved me, who had looked at the floor while delivering a speech his mother had probably helped him rehearse, was about to discover something that the Aldridge family had never considered possible. The woman they called a downgrade, the girl from Gresham, the daughter of a seamstress and a dead postal carrier, the woman who was not Brooke Callahan and never would be, and never wanted to be. That woman had been the only reason Tristan Aldridge had a kitchen to stand in, a deck to walk on, and a house to come home to. And the numbers proved it. Not feelings, not opinions, not Sunday wine-tasting commentary or passive-aggressive compliments or Instagram captions about blessed evenings. Numbers, documents, exhibits, 26 of them, A through Z. The thing about numbers is they do not care who your mother is. They do not care about your last name or your neighborhood or whether your family has a winery in Willamette Valley. Numbers do not attend wine tastings. Numbers do not have opinions about your countertops. Numbers just tell the truth, and the truth was sitting in a filing at the Multnomah County Courthouse, 26 exhibits deep, with my name on every single page. There are moments in a case when you think you have cataloged every variable, every receipt highlighted, every timestamp cross-referenced, every lie pinned to a date and a dollar amount. 26 exhibits, A through Z, each one sealed in a fireproof lockbox that cost $39 at Home Depot. You feel finished, you feel airtight, and then someone walks through the door you forgot existed. Sophia called at 11:42 on a Tuesday morning. I was at my desk at Cascade Pacific, reviewing a water damage claim in Milwaukee, where the homeowner swore the flooding came from a burst pipe, but the photos showed a garden hose running through a basement window. People always underestimate what an investigator notices. Margot, Sophia said. Her voice had a texture I had not heard before. Not urgency, not concern, something closer to disbelief. Can you come to my office at 4:30 today? Is something wrong with the filing? Nothing is wrong. Something is very right, but I need you here to see it. I told my supervisor I had a dental appointment. I had used the dental excuse 3 times in 2 months. At some point, human resources was going to assume I had no teeth left. Sophia's office in Beaverton still smelled like lemon cleaner and old paper. Sonia Sotomayor still watched from the wall. But there was someone else in the room. A woman, mid-60s, sitting in the leather chair across from Sophia's desk. She wore a camel-colored wool coat, pearl earrings, and an expression that looked like it had been rehearsed in a mirror for several days before arriving. It was Carolyn Aldridge. I stopped in the doorway. My hand was still on the brass knob. The air in the room changed the way air changes when you open a freezer. Sit down, Margot, Sophia said. She gestured to the second chair. Mrs. Aldridge contacted my office yesterday afternoon. She has a statement she would like to make. On the record. I sat. I did not look at Carolyn. I looked at the Sotomayor photograph and thought about what the justice might do in this situation. Probably something more dignified than what I was imagining. Carolyn opened her handbag. It was a Coach bag, tan leather, probably $400. She removed a single sheet of paper, folded once, and placed it on Sophia's desk. I wrote this myself, Carolyn said. Her voice was smaller than I had ever heard it. Gone was the woman who hosted wine tastings like courtroom proceedings. Gone was the woman who seated Brooke Callahan in my chair. This was a woman who had not slept well in several nights, and whose concealer could not hide it. Sophia unfolded the paper and read it silently. Then she slid it across to me. The letter was handwritten, blue ink. Carolyn's penmanship was precise, the kind they taught in private schools in the 1970s. It said the following, and I am paraphrasing only slightly because some sentences I will carry with me for the rest of my life. She admitted to recommending the appraiser, Richard, from Pacific Crest Valuation. She admitted to encouraging Tristan to file for divorce and to pursue a 50-50 split that excluded my inheritance. She admitted to funding the private investigator through Cascade Investigations. She admitted to orchestrating Brooke Callahan's reintroduction into Tristan's life at the July 4th gathering. And she admitted that the $34,500 renovation was her idea, designed to deplete the joint savings before a filing. At the bottom, in slightly shakier handwriting, she wrote, "I did these things because I believed my son deserved someone from our world. I was wrong. Margot was his world. I took that from both of them." I read it twice. Then I set it down on Sophia's desk, lining up the edge with the corner of the desk pad, because that is what I do when I am trying very hard not to feel something in a room full of people. "Why?" I asked, not angry, genuinely curious. The way you ask a claimant why they thought running a garden hose through a basement window would fool anyone. Carolyn looked at me for the first time. "Martin," she said. "Martin told me what he told you on the phone, about Patricia, about the playbook. He said if I did not come here and tell the truth, he would leave. After 41 years, he said he should have left then, and he would not make the same mistake twice." Martin Aldridge, the man who built birdhouses and passed corn in silence. The man whose strategic silence turned out not to be strategy at all, but storage. 41 years of storage, and it all emptied out in a single phone call. Sophia placed Carolyn's letter in a clear plastic sleeve and labeled it. She looked at me and said, "This will be filed as a supplemental declaration. It corroborates every exhibit in your lockbox." "Margot, your case was already strong. Now it is devastating." I nodded. I thanked Carolyn, not because she deserved gratitude, but because I was raised by Mei Lin Chen, and Mei Lin Chen taught me that you thank people when they finally do the right thing, even if it took them 41 years and the threat of losing everything. On the drive back to Jess's apartment, I stopped at Fred Meyer. I bought a pint of Ben & Jerry's half-baked, a bag of tangerines, and a single manila envelope. When I got to Jess's apartment, Objection jumped onto my lap and purred like a small engine with bad alignment. I ate 3 spoonfuls of ice cream. Then I called Mei Lin. "Ma," I said, "it is almost over." She was quiet for 4 seconds. Then she said, in English, "Good. Now come home and eat real food." Tomorrow was the mediation. 26 exhibits, 1 supplemental declaration, and a claims investigator who had never lost a case she believed in. Tristan Aldridge was about to learn the difference between filing a claim and surviving an audit. The mediation took place on a Wednesday, 10:14 in the morning. Conference Room B at the Multnomah County Courthouse, 2nd floor, East Wing, fluorescent lighting that made everyone look like they had not slept in a calendar year, which, in fairness, was accurate for at least 2 of the people in that room. Sophia arrived at 9:45 with a rolling briefcase that sounded like a small suitcase on cobblestone. She wore a navy blazer, no jewelry, and the kind of expression that suggested she had already won and was simply waiting for the rest of the room to catch up. Tristan sat across the table with Mark Calloway. He was wearing the gray suit he bought for his cousin's wedding in 2022. I knew this because I had ironed it. He did not look at me. He looked at the table, at Mark's legal pad, at the window, at anything that was not the woman he had lived with for 10 years and dismissed in a single rehearsed sentence on a Thursday evening in December. Mark Calloway opened with a proposal. 50-50 split of all marital assets. Standard dissolution. No fault. Equitable distribution. Sophia let him finish. She has a technique. She lets the other side talk until they run out of momentum, the way you let a car roll to a stop before you tow it. Then she opened the rolling briefcase. 26 exhibits, plastic sleeves, labeled A through Z. She placed them on the table in alphabetical order, left to right, like a librarian arranging a shelf she had been building for months. Then she placed the supplemental declaration, Carolyn's handwritten confession, at the end. 27 documents in total. She did not raise her voice. She walked Mark Calloway through each exhibit the way I walk a homeowner through a denied claim. Methodical, patient, inevitable. Exhibit A. The savings account screenshot showing the balance drop from $71,400 to $36,900 after the unauthorized renovation. Exhibit B. Phone bill frequency analysis. Exhibit C. The appraisal Margot never authorized. Exhibit D, Carolyn's referral email. Exhibits F through K, the paper trail proving the inheritance was separate property. Exhibit L, the password lockout. Exhibit M, the subpoena. Exhibit N, the private investigator Margot never needed to hire because Carolyn had already done it for her. Exhibit Q, the $9,400 dissipation. Exhibit T, the hidden savings account. And then the supplemental declaration. Carolyn Aldridge's own handwriting admitting she had orchestrated the appraisal, the renovation, the PI, and the reintroduction of Brooke Callahan. Mark Calloway read it. He read it again. He leaned over to Tristan and whispered something. Tristan's jaw moved slightly, the way a door shifts when the foundation beneath it is no longer level. The mediator, a retired judge named Harold Fong, reviewed the documents for 22 minutes. He removed his glasses twice. He asked Sophia one question. Is the inheritance documentation complete? Sophia said, "It is airtight." Harold Fong looked at Mark Calloway and said, "Counsel, I strongly recommend your client consider the proposed terms." The final settlement was signed at 11:51, 1 hour and 37 minutes from start to finish. Margot Chen Sullivan received $187,200. That included the full reimbursement of the $139,800 inheritance and $47,400 in marital equity. Tristan Aldridge received $47,400. The $9,400 in dissipated assets was deducted from his share. The hidden savings of $15,600 was flagged and redistributed. The BMW lease remained his responsibility. $624 a month for a car that now drove to a studio apartment in Tigard. I signed the documents with a black pen. I did not use blue. Blue was for Carolyn's confessions. Black was for conclusions. Outside the courthouse, Sophia shook my hand. She held it for 3 seconds longer than a professional handshake requires. "Margot," she said, "it has been a genuine pleasure auditing your marriage." I laughed. It was the first laugh that did not have something sharp hidden behind it in a very long time. 3 weeks later, I moved into apartment 412 on Southeast Division Street, 694 square feet, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a kitchen so small that 2 people could not open the refrigerator and the oven at the same time. Rent was $1,350 a month, which I could afford because I had never in my life spent money I could not account for. The first night, I sat on the floor because the couch was not arriving until Saturday. Objection was not there. The tangerines were not there. Maylin's scallion pancakes were not there. It was just me, a fireproof lockbox that no longer needed to be locked, and the framed photograph of Patrick Sullivan leaning against the wall beneath the window. I looked at the photograph. My father, 38 years old, standing next to his mail truck, smiling the way people smile when they do not know that weather stripping will be the last thing they ever purchase. I said, "I kept it traceable, Dad." The apartment was quiet. Division Street hummed below. A siren passed somewhere east, probably heading toward the hospital where Jess was working the overnight shift. The radiator clicked twice, then settled. 694 square feet, no wine cellar, no 3-car garage, no lake view, no quartz countertops, no passive-aggressive Sunday tastings, no Brooke Callahan seated in my chair, no $34,500 surprises. Just space. Clean, honest, documented space. I opened my laptop and created a new file. I named it claim number 0002, not because there was a second husband or a second betrayal, but because a claims investigator does not stop after one case. She keeps the system running. She keeps the files organized. She keeps herself ready. And if you are listening to this and you are sitting in your own version of a Sunday wine tasting, smiling while someone seats another woman in your chair, I want you to hear something that took me 36 years and 26 exhibits to learn. You do not have to endure. You do not have to be small. You do not have to wait for someone to hand you permission to open your own case. Buy the lockbox. It is $39 at Home Depot. Start with Exhibit A. Be big. Claim resolved. Claimant, whole.